Hello and welcome to this assembly instruction for Modelrailroad3D DB Erz Id, the iron ore hopper car in German style 1950s. We're going to go through both the setup in the slicer. We're also going to cover how to print, clean, post-cure and also assemble and paint this model. I'm going to start by looking at the file called File Revision History, which is always included in these type of sets. It's like this with CGTrader, that once you have bought a file package, at some time you are enabled to download updated versions. And in this file you can see if there's been updates made and when they have been done and what they were about. So check that you have the latest revision of the file before getting started. So when you first bought the file package and then downloaded the file, it will be a compressed file and you need to right click on that and select extract all. Then you get the full file list. These are all the file included in the package. So let's start by looking at the assembled part first, which is the all parts. So here are all the parts assembled and you can all see that it's dash all parts. This is the body, the bogies, the buffer curve, the flat buffer and the neem mechanism. So there you see the different items as well as the placement of it. Then there are basically 3 of each file. So there is a preview image, a PNG, and then this is the bogie version 7, and that one's without support if you want to resize or do something special with it. Otherwise it's the version 7_X1, which means supported one piece, and then you have the supported file suitable for resin print. And all the files are here in case you want to set a print plate up on your own, a custom print plate with, say, you want to print 2 cars at a time or 4 bodies at a time. Well, then you can do this. This is the spray template where you can spray the Erz Id on the side using white paint. We're coming to that later in the painting section. But we're selecting this. This is the all parts, and this is, as it sounds, all the parts you need to build one of these cars. So here are the buffers, the neem couplings, the bogies and the body. Now before we hit slice here and later print, we need to do some settings which are very critical to get a successful result. And one of them is the layer thickness. There you should select something like 0.03, which is very important. Another important setting is of course the exposure for the normal layers. This will be dependent on what type of printer you have. And the settings you see here is for a mono 2. And I selected 2.4 seconds for normal layer and 30 seconds for the bottom layers. And then we just hit slice and save it to a USB memory stick. And that stick you will then insert into your 3D printer. And then you can just hit print on that, and when it's ready, about 4 hours and 50 minutes later, it looks like this. So all the parts, we're removing the protective hood, and then we're gonna wash these. So I'm removing the print head from the printer and then just tearing or scraping these off into the bin full of alcohol. I typically wash complex parts like this for 8 minutes. This is a Wash and Cure Plus from Anycubic. And once washed for 8 minutes, it will look like this. These are the tools I use to remove the supports. This is a side cutter, a small type, which is very good to have. I use also a scalpel and a round paintbrush to remove supports landed in different places and dust. Now we're going to remove the supports here. I'm using my side cutter to cut away these thick supports on the neem There are also these thin ones, and once you cut it up here, you can just tear it off. You don't have to cut it away, just tear it off like this. And then we're ready to just twist the base here, and the neem coupling will come off. We do the same with the other. Then there is a spray template. It's just to break it away from the supports. For the bogies, it's important to cut the thicker supports, and you find 4 of them under each, and then 1 each in the corners, plus here and there, and same on the other side as well. So with those cut away, then it's just to twist it a bit, and it will come off from the other supports as well. So you have here in the corners as well, plus there, and the last one. Then we can just twist it and remove the supports from the bogie. Now next up is the body. It's a bit more complicated. It has a lot of footsteps, especially on this side here with the brake platform. So first time you do this, it will be kind of confusing knowing what to cut and not to cut to avoid cutting handrails and stuff. But as you progress through the production of your coming fleet of iron ore cars, this will go faster and faster. So I'm continuing until I have removed all the supports on the short side here, so I can access the thick supports holding the body to the bottom plate. So I need to tear these away here. And with that done, we're ready to cut the supports all around. For that, I'm using my scalpel, so I'm just cutting all the supports away from the body, both along the long sides and the short sides like this. I try to avoid holding onto the body or the printed items at all times. When I remove supports, I always keep my hands on the printing plate instead. Avoid damaging the model. So now we got it away from the print plate and most of the supports. Now there are still some supports here which are needed to give the right shape to things here, and this needs to go as well. This is holding the part for the neem mechanism, and there's a similar one on the other side which also need to go. And these 3 here holding the beam is the last one to go. Now, since a while, I've started to assemble the buffers ahead of post-curing. I found it easier. And if you look at the buffers, there are 2 curved buffers and 2 flat. So identify those, and then put a little drop of fast-set glue on the surface somewhere, and then dip the end of the buffer into that. Now the curved buffers should be to the left and the flat ones to the right. So here's a flat buffer. There, check alignment, and so it's straight in all directions. And then we'll take the other one. This is the curved one. So you need to straighten it up a bit. Like that. Now it's perfect, and all the buffers in place. Perfect. Now we can post-cure this. I typically post-cure parts like this for 4 minutes. So in the post-curer, I let them run like this all the way. I don't turn or do anything with them. Now, before priming the parts, we need to mask these surfaces with which the neem mechanism will slide over. So I'm putting a piece of carpenter's tape here, just so they're protected from both the primer and later the paint. You also see here that there are marks from the supports still in this area. So I use a sanding block with a 240 grit sanding paper, just to smoothen that surface out. And then ahead of priming, I use my
paintbrush to remove any. The primer I'm using for this typically is the Tamiya Surface Primer Gray. It's an excellent primer, and the purpose priming 3D printed parts is to avoid later skewing or warping. However, this one, the neem mechanism, should not be primed. It should be left just the way it is. And after priming, it will look like this. So now, once this has dried, we're ready to paint. And the paint mix I'm using is burnt umber brown, cavalry brown, and then a portion of gloss varnish. And the purpose with this gloss varnish is to make the paint more satin than matte, and also it gives the paint a better float over the surface. You need the gloss varnish in the mix to get a good look of this paint. I paint all sides with this, whilst the boogies are painted in black color. If you don't have an airbrush, use a spray can instead. Once the paint has dried, I'm now painting the details, the buffers black, and then I remove the masks. So also I paint this part of the neem, the very front part, in black, so it doesn't pop out all that much in the appearance. And then we're also gonna spray this Erz Id on the side of the car. It fits perfectly because it's shaped according to the shape of the car, so you just snap it in and seal all around with carpenter's tape. So that's what it looks. And this lever should be red. So with that done, we have painted all of the parts. Now we can start assembly, and before we do that, I'm adding a drop of oil to the points on the neem coupling like this, and then I insert the neem coupling like this here. So now one of the mechanisms are in place, now the other one, and then the neem spring should be between these two here. So, and there's a separate video on how to make these springs if you cannot find them in the shops. Now for the boogies, you need to lubricate around the fitting and also down on the body, and the boogie should be inserted with this open part against the neem, so like that. And then it's just the wheels. Wheels can also be bought at your hobby store per your preference, what you have, either DC 2-rail wheels, or this is a 3-rail Marklin style wheel. And I just checked that the boogies are moving normally, and then I insert the couplings. In this case here I use Marklin short couplings. Now one very important point here, if you intend to have cargo in it and glue the cargo in place, is to use fold wrapper foil in between. Because if you put a lot of moisture onto that 3D printed plastic, the model will warp and get destroyed. So use food wrapper plastic, and then you can pour as much glue over your cargo as you like without risk damaging the 3D printed material. And once the cargo dried, you can put it back into the hopper car again. So here's our set with this German style iron ore hopper cars. Yeah, it's a real beauty, isn't it? The guide you just watched is also valid for the 1D, the 2D and the 3D type car. Thank you for watching, and I wish you happy printing.